get back in the game.
I was arrested at least 50 times. My pimp was never arrested the entire time that I was forced to work for him. You had to be aware of everything that was going on, or you would die.
That was another survivor of sex slavery, and she makes a good point. The girls are arrested time after time, while their pimps often get away scot-free. Joining me now is Siddharth Kara, author of Sex Trafficking, Inside Business of Modern Slavery. And still with us, Demi and Ashton Kutcher. Siddharth Kara, tell me what your findings have been about modern sex slavery.
I would say that there's at a minimum, based on my data sampling around the world, and by that I mean going into brothels, massage parlors, apartments and clubs where these children are being sold for sex, at a minimum 1.5 million trafficked sex slaves in the world today, generating profits in 2010 that exceeded $39 billion. I
mean, that's a staggering sum of money.
Well, and if you work it out on a per-slave basis, okay, the global weighted average is around $29,000 in profit per slave per year. Now, the acquisition cost of the average trafficked sex slave is under $2,000. So right there, the return on investment is staggering. And that's what drives interest for criminals and organized crime groups to get involved in the wanton sexual exploitation of women and children.
How much money is the US government spending on, say, policing drugs compared to sex slavery?
Great question, Piers. And in general, the US government spends around 300 to 350 times more money combating drug trafficking than it does human trafficking. And that's a sad statement of our moral priorities.
People watching this will be wondering, okay, we see the problem, we see the scale of it. How should the law be changed now? If you were in charge of policy in this area, what's the key thing that should be done?
Well, first, look, the reason why we've, initiated this campaign is we have to create awareness. You have to acknowledge a problem exists before you can actually go about finding a solution. And what we've found is that most people aren't even aware of what's going on. And I think it hasn't been a high priority because it really hasn't been pushed forward. I think that we have a few small things. One, I think we need to spend a little bit more money training our law enforcement. Because if their mandate is to clean up prostitution, then what they're doing is they're going out and arresting prostitutes. But we're just constantly then addressing the effect. And I think we need to get to the cause, and the cause is the demand. That's the buyers and the sellers. And one of the things I mentioned earlier is the Safe Harbor Act, which is a simple law that we have only 4 states officially that have adopted this, which is identifying an underage girl as a victim of rape. And I think we have only 4. There's like 4 or 5 states that still don't even consider human trafficking a felony. So I think we have some...
And there's also age mistake defense laws.
Yeah.
Where a guy can go into a courtroom and say, "Oh, I didn't know she was, of that age." Like, I think when you're buying a human, the age mistake defense law is kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense anymore. And I think that we can address that as well. So I mean, there's legislation state by state that can improve it. But I think back to what Demi said, the thing that's going to improve it the most is people not buying.
I mean, what I like about the campaign is it's got humor, it's got big celebrity power, it's going to get to the kind of demographic that I guess we're talking about here. And it seems to me the real problem from all that we've been discussing is that a lot of these guys just aren't aware of the crime they're committing. As you said, that they think the women are up for it, when actually they're not. They're being tortured and maimed and threatened with death to be up for it.
I'll give you a perfect example. I met a girl who's now, I think, 18. She was 11 years old. She was taken in by a pimp in the same way that was described by Nicole. He took her to McDonald's. He took her to the mall. She clearly was a little lost and looking for a place of belonging. And then once comfortable, within a few days, she was given a quota, as Brad was mentioning, and that was $1,500 a night. If she didn't make that quota, she was put into a tub of ice or beaten with whatever was handy. Her pimp was referred to as Daddy Daycare because he had all of the really young girls. And he loaded them in a car, drove them to Vegas. There wasn't enough room in the car, so put 2 of them, including her, into a trunk. Arrived, posted them all on Craigslist, and then went to work. Now, it's a vicious cycle, but he clearly doesn't feel that there was enormous risk in his endeavor, and I don't think today is caught.
Well, it's shocking stuff. And when we come back after the break, I want to wrap up the debate here and also find out what you two are going to be up to going forward outside of this, even though I know it's consuming your lives. It's been a fascinating hour. I mean, gruesome in many ways, but I hope will raise the awareness that you're after to try and get people to understand what this is really all about. I mean, you said that you're both committed to the cause, whether it's 30 days or 30 years. Do you mean that? I mean, could you be in this for 30 years?
Probably longer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this isn't an issue you can step into and expect to, have a big win quickly. It's too complex, and some of the best advice we got in the very beginning when we were exploring this was be prepared to be in it for the long haul. And
how do you find the Washington sharks compared to the Hollywood sharks? When you've been lobbying politicians, are they easier to deal with than the Hollywood moguls you've had to wrestle with before?
You know what I would say, not just exclusive to Washington, but I think from when we started getting involved in this issue, which is now almost 3 years ago, where it was very difficult to even get the conversations going, not very popular to really the last 6 months to a year, where I think that the general awareness is starting to rise, and I think the urgency is starting to be felt. And so I think the one thing about this issue is I don't think that there's anybody who disagrees that it's unacceptable. I think it's totally bipartisan, and it's just a matter of really forcing the hand to make it a priority, and getting law enforcement to be given the directive to go after what's the cause, which is the traffickers and the Johns. I mean, to get a slap on the wrist and maybe a $200 fine, and John School. I mean, speaking of drugs come with a harsher punishment, buying drugs, than buying a human being.
Obviously, you've worked very successfully on this together and passionately, and you've worked hard on the marriage. We've already discussed that, and Twitter. I suppose the obvious gap in all this and these joint ventures is what you're supposed to be, you two, which is movie stars.
We're trying to fit that in a little bit.
I mean, what do we remake Indecent Proposal? You can play the halfway husband.
I'm not playing Woody.
You can play Woody. I'll play Robert Redford.
I'm not playing Woody.
What are you up to movie-wise?
I just finished a movie called New Year's Eve, and now I'm finishing this campaign, and then I'm going to go hunt for work.
And I have LOL that I did with Miley Cyrus, and another film, Margin Call. It's about the crash, the financial crisis, and what was the other one? Another Happy Day with Ellen Barkin and Ellen Burstyn.
We see you talking to you about.
And I'm actually, works good when you start forgetting the movies.
This is the thing. You sounded so passionate and focused about the issue that you're absorbed with. Have you taken over in priorities?
Yes,
both of you.
It depends. The thing about it is that when you're done with the movie, you're done with the movie. I don't think that we're ever going to be done with this issue.
This bleeds into everything.
This one sits with you every single day. It's like our fourth kid right now.
I think we want to make a difference with this. We don't want to just come and talk about it. We want to actually see it change, and that isn't going to come by us just jumping in and doing a little bit and coming and talking. It really does require that depth of commitment.
And it's about doing the other people that have been working on this issue for so long justice.
Well, I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
And I hope it's a very successful campaign. It deserves to be. It's well thought out. And I think it will resonate with people. Demi, it's been a delight.
Thank you so
Ashton,
much.
so.
Cheers.
You do all the talking, so hey.
That is all for tonight. I'll leave these two squabbling. If you're at home wondering what you can do to help, we'll have all the information needed on our web.